In this video, you're going to learn everything you need to know in order to begin to make mushroom fruiting blocks at home. So a mushroom fruiting block is a substrate that's been sterilized and inoculated with mycelium to grow mushrooms directly out of the bag. This step-by-step video is going to show you everything that you need to do and everything you need to get growing. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back, my friends. Today we're continuing with the mushroom cultivation series. We're putting together a whole playlist so that you can become empowered to grow your own gourmet edible mushrooms at home. If you missed any of the previous videos in the series, be sure you check below in the description box. There's a playlist with all the information for you to view at your leisure. So today we're going to be sterilizing our substrate mix, a nutritional mix to grow some king blue oyster mushrooms in. And we're going to utilize these mushroom growing bags here to make something called a fruiting block. So we'll be inoculating our fruiting blocks, our substrate today, using this grain spawn. 3.5 weeks ago, we took some liquid mushroom culture and injected it into this ryeberry grain. And now we've got a bunch of mycelium growing all over it. And this is going to be a fantastic starter when we introduce it to our substrate. So here's the simple setup I got going here to mix together our substrate, the food source for the mushrooms to grow in. And you could buy these mushroom growing bags in a bulk pack, which come with a micron filter on them. Now this has a 0.2 micron filter, but for oyster mushrooms, you could go with the 0.5 micron filter as well. The 0.5 micron filter allows for a little bit more air exchange, which is just fine when you're putting together a substrate to grow mushrooms like oyster mushrooms. On the other hand, mushrooms like shiitake are going to do better with a higher filtration because they have a higher likelihood of contamination. But either way, 0.02 or 0.05 micron filters are going to work. So I've got one of my bags here and I've got it sitting in a container on a scale. And we're going to turn on the scale and we're going to tare the scale to 0 with the container in the bag on there, and we've got it on pounds. So we're going to be making a 5-pound block, which is pretty common for the home gourmet mushroom grower. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put a 50-50 mix of a hardwood pelletized sawdust along with some soy hulls. So here's the two products I'm using. You could use something different if you'd like. This particular product by Traeger you can pick up at a lot of the big box stores, and this is a mix of different hardwood pellets, but you can also find it on Amazon. And for the soy hull pellets, I got this from Mushroom Media Online. They have a direct website, or you can purchase it from Amazon as well. So if you're following along on this grow and you need more information about any of these products or you need to pick them up, be sure to check the description box below. I'm including all the different products that I'm using today and a link where you can get them yourself. All right, so the easy math that I'm going to share with you in order to make a 5-pound fruiting block is simple. It's 1 pound of the pelletized soy hulls along with 1 pound of the pelletized hardwood sawdust. And then we need to add water to hydrate. It's going to take up that water almost immediately, just a few minutes. So we're going to use 3 pounds of water. So we're going to measure all those ingredients right here on a little kitchen scale. And that's the reason for this container as well, just to help to keep the bag in place while we're filling it with our ingredients. And while we're adding this in, we'll pay attention to the weight. There we are with 1 pound. And we'll grab some of our pelletized soy hulls. There we are, just a tad over 2 pounds. All right, so now we're going to add in our water and bring this up to 5 pounds. And I like to use distilled water, but it's really not necessary. A lot of folks just use tap water and get great results as well. So it's up to you. There we are at 5 pounds. So now we can take our bag out of the container here. And you can see how almost immediately the water has soaked in to those pellets. It's only been about 20 seconds. So we'll let that sit for a couple minutes. So while we're waiting for that, let me just take a moment to share with you the setup here, how we're going to be sterilizing our substrate, these fruiting bags. So this is a 23-quart Presto pressure canner. It's a very affordable model, just a little over $100. And we can sterilize 4 5-pound blocks of substrate in one go. And because I wanted to be outdoors today, it's a beautiful day, I decided to use my induction cooker rather than just use the stovetop. This could be done indoors very easily as well. It is suggested by the manufacturer of this pressure canner that you don't use an open flame or use a propane burner to heat up the cooker. All right, so here's the inside of the cooker, and it comes with this little plate here just to keep whatever you're canning off the bottom of the cooker so it doesn't burn. Now this isn't efficient enough for the mushroom substrate we'll be making today, but you could actually purchase another bottom to fit this machine that raises it higher off the bottom of the cooker. I have one on order. It's a trivet. But another way to accomplish it is to just put some sort of a spacer at the bottom. Canning lids work good. You could use cookie cutters. But that's going to give us a little bit more space off the bottom of the cooker, and also give us a little bit more room to add some more water, because we're going to be pressure cooking about 2.5 hours. So you don't want so much water that it's creeping into the bag, but you want enough so that it can sustain the cook time. All right, so it's been a couple minutes now, and we're now just going to fold this bag and get it ready to fit into the pressure cooker. The way we want to do that is you want to follow the gussets on the bag, the creases here, so it can help to make it more of a block, get it more shapely. Then you can follow the creases. And what we're going to do is fold the top flap here over the filter on the inside, and we're going to take that little excess piece there and fold it right under the block. And that's all there is to it. This block is complete and ready to go into the pressure canner for sterilization. So we're just going to make 3 more of these now for a total of 4 to fit in the pressure cooker. All right, so we got our 4 completed fruiting blocks ready to go into the canner. Now the way we situate these in the pressure canner is important. I'll tell you why as I'm going about putting them in here. So the first 2 blocks at the bottom of the canner are basically put in upside down. So you've got the flap sticking upward. That's because after the pressure cooker begins to cool down after the cooking time, it's going to be sucking the air out of the bag, and if these flaps are submerged in water, it can actually pull that water into the substrate mix here and create a soggy mix, which we don't want. So make sure you got those flaps pointed upward for the 2 bottom bags, and the following 2 can go right side up with the flap tucked under the bag just as it was sitting on the table. So we're setting them on top just as you see them sitting on the table here. Squeeze this last one in here. You want to try to keep these bags nice and tight when you're placing them in the canner. You don't want a bunch of loose material floating around in here. Beautiful. Look at that perfect fit in there. Now, these bags can potentially expand a little bit, or these flaps could become loose in the process and end up clogging one of the ports or the pressure release valve here. So there's something that we want to do before we put the lid on, and that is to simply place some sort of a weight, like a plate, on top. That's just going to ensure that those flaps of plastic don't flap up and block those ports. All right, so now we're just going to add some water into the cooker. Again, I like to use distilled water. Tap water should work fine for you as well. All right, so we just want to add enough water to go up about halfway to 3/4 up the bottom bag. Now, if you're using the trivet that fits in this cooker that I mentioned earlier, I highly recommend picking one up. Then you're going to want to add water just below the bottom of the floor of the trivet. But because we got a lower profile and we're using canning lids to bring that flooring up a little bit, we got to add more water going part way up the side of the bags. So that should be enough water to carry us through the cooking process about 2.5 hours and not be too much water that it floods into those bottom bags. So we'll be adding our weight here on the steam vent once we get the cooker up to temperature and we have steady steam flow coming out for about 5 minutes. We just want all the air that's locked into the canner right now to be released before we put on that weight. Now what we're going to be doing is getting this up to temperature and holding that temperature at 15 pounds for 2.5 hours, at which point we'll turn off the heat and allow the canner to cool down naturally over the course of several hours, perhaps overnight. Well guys, we had a little problem with the induction cooker. Decided to crap out on me, but that's okay. A little less noisy in here anyways. So we'll just continue the process right here on the stovetop. So we'll just turn the burner up to high and get everything up to temperature. All right, so we've had some steam coming out of that vent for a few minutes now. So we're gonna go ahead and place the weight on top. And that's gonna quickly get us up to 15 pounds of pressure, at which point we'll adjust the temperature on the stovetop, turn it down a bit, probably about to level 3 or 4, and monitor this and just make sure we're staying at around 15 pounds. See you in a little bit. All right, so we are now up to temperature with the pressure just above 15 pounds. So this is the time when you want to turn down the heat. We're going to bring it down to level 3, level 4. Keep an eye on it. That should keep us consistently at about 15 pounds with my particular stovetop in my experience. But we'll check in and make sure that it stays in that range. Now we're going to go ahead and cook these bags now for 2.5 hours. You don't want to shortcut on the cooking time. You want to make sure that that substrate all the way to the core of the bag gets sterilized. So 2.5 hours has proven across the board to be the correct amount of time. Some people try to shortcut that a bit at 2 hours, but you do risk a higher frequency of contamination if you do so. So we're going to keep it at that 15 pounds for 2.5 hours, at which point we'll turn off the burner and let this cool down overnight, where we will then begin our inoculation stage of these bags. So I'll probably come back at you with a quick check-in at some point before we completely run down the clock here, just to show you that we're holding temperature, and we'll go from there. So see you in a little bit. All right guys, so that sound means we are done, and we are hanging tight at the 15 pounds of pressure throughout the cooking cycle. I adjusted the temperature between 2 and 4 on my dial here, just to keep it at that proper pressure. So now we just turn off the burner and let this cool down naturally. Wait a few hours, wait overnight, and then you're good to go with the next step. See you in a few. So at this stage, all the bags are essentially vacuum sealed through the pressure cooking and cooling process. And because of that, I'm still not worried about contamination. Not until we open the bag to inoculate it with the grain spawn does that become an issue. So from this point forward, I'll be narrating the video for sanitation purposes. We don't want to be speaking around our lab area here. So I'm going to be using the still air box to perform my inoculation of the substrate today. This is a great alternative to a laminar flow hood, which is quite expensive to get started. So either end of this box opens up for easy cleaning and to bring your materials into the still air box. So here we've got our 4 fruiting blocks ready for inoculation, and we've got our grain spawn here, along with some paper towels, some 70% isopropyl alcohol. You want to go with 70 over 90. It's better for a disinfectant. We've also got some zip ties, a small teaspoon, and some nitrile gloves. So from this point forward, everything is about sanitation and cleanliness. I'm going to start off by sanitizing my gloves. And the inside of the still air box. Now I really like this product by 𝗙𝗶𝘁𝗲. It's collapsible, so you can easily store it out of the way. It has a nice, great big work area. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can create a still air box at home For just pennies on the dollar, really. You could use a 30-quart plastic storage container, for example. But I went ahead and made the investment, and I'm happy I did. This works a charm. So now that we got the inside of the still air box all sanitized, using the isopropyl alcohol, I'm now going to sanitize all the different material that I now brought into the box. So I spray everything down thoroughly and then give it a nice wipe down using a shop towel, which I prefer to use as it doesn't leave behind any lint. Now that we got our area all nice, clean, contaminant free, we're going to go ahead and crack our vacuum sealed fruiting block bags open along with the grain spawn in the jar. And I'm going to be putting about half a jar's worth of grain spawn in each bag. You could use less. You could probably get away with doing all 4 of these fruiting blocks with just 1 jar of grain spawn. But by adding a little bit more, we're increasing our odds of success. And I've got plenty of grain spawn. I've got a few more jars and they're ready to go right now, so I'm not going to hold back. So once we add in our grain spawn into the bag of substrate, we just want to zip tie the top. Some folks choose to heat seal their bags, but a zip tie will work just as well. Want to make sure you get it on nice and tight. You don't want any air to be able to get into the bag that's not entering through the micropore filter on the outside of the bag. Alright, so now that we've added the grain spawn to each one of the bags, we got it zip tied shut. We're now safe to open up the still air box and bring the bags out. And at this point, we just want to mix that grain spawn really well into the substrate. So break up any larger chunks of spawn and get it mixed thoroughly all throughout that substrate. Now I'm just going to quickly clean out the still air box, get it ready for next time. And that's all there is to it. Our fruiting blocks are now inoculated with the grain spawn. In just a matter of about a week and a half, 2 weeks, we should see it completely full of mycelium, at which point we'll begin the fruiting cycle, which is coming up on the next video. And from that point, it's just a short amount of time before we start harvesting our edible gourmet mushrooms. So with that, stay tuned. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you can follow along this whole process. Be sure to check the playlist and the links below for more information. So with that, I want to thank you all for watching. Have yourself a great rest of the day. Until next time, this is Dan from PlantAbundance.com. Take care. I'll be talking to you again soon.